Hello, Straight Talk audience. This is AI Gonzalo Lira, and this is Straight Talk, Cyber Cafe Edition.
Hello. What's up, guys? How you doing? Welcome to another edition of the Delivery Report with Adam Maxwell and Professor Red Pill. Last week we talked about a Putin Trump meeting in Alaska, and I predicted that there would be a peace deal and the war would be over. And we are here now, and pretty much what I predicted a year ago, that I said that the Ukraine war would probably be over by the end of summer. And negotiated peace would be arranged due to the economics of Europe self-sanctioning and Russia's ongoing, it is what it is. That being said, Adam Maxwell, take it away.
Thank you for joining us on the 20th of August, 2025. I've heard it said that Europe needs energy, Russia needs markets. Who's to say? Last episode, we did talk about that the war is strategically over, although we said the fighting wouldn't necessarily end, and that the summit itself would have limited effect on the actual fighting. But we talked about the recognition of trade deals and economics, and that's what the summit's really about. I actually don't think that what was discussed about Ukraine was of much significance at the summit. Yes, it's important and it fuels narratives, but I think America understands the Russian position, and Russia understands why America's doing as it's done. I don't think they gained much insight from each other in the 3-hour meeting or so. But what they did do is discuss tactics and strategies, and how are we going to puppeteer the next stage, the next leg of the war. And is a war. It's just choreographed. It's all wrestling. Doesn't diminish the fact that hundreds of thousands of people have died. So I think that what was probably, and we can't know, but probably what was discussed between Trump and Putin was far more than just Ukraine. It was Azerbaijan, was what happens after the war with Ukraine, Europe, sanctions, trade, energy. And that's what this episode's about. The business, it's just business. Business is the mask, and what matters really is the imperial theater that sustains it. You've got energy, weapons, and technology, specifically AI, but not only. We've also got aerospace weapons, arms treaties, nuclear weapons, and missiles, ballistic missiles generally. This really is imperial politics, not national policy. And honestly, it hasn't changed for centuries. I don't think there is much benefit to focus on Trump's policy. It's irrelevant. He's the figurehead. He's the president of the empire. But the truth is that all the regimes, Trump, Biden, whoever, are just stage actors in this centuries-old imperial model. They're the figurehead.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much that's it in a nutshell. I mean, we pretty much covered last week what was probably going to happen. It did happen, pretty much to the T of what we said would occur. We made predictions 6 months ago that it's looking like this war is going to come to a final conclusion by the summer. And generally a good indicator of the fact that there is a peace deal coming is the fact that, like, war, generally before a peace deal or any type of treaty is aligned, there's a lot of fighting and major fighting up until the actual just climax. It just dies. We saw this in the Vietnam conflict, where the United States just bombed the hell out of Laos and like North Vietnam right before the peace deal. Obviously, we know the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, boom, 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 the war, they signed a peace deal and concessions and so on and so forth. So nothing's new. I mean, this has all happened throughout history. And, this is how war's done. But like I said, I personally think that it's a bankers' war. I think the bankers were funding both sides of the conflict. Military industrial complex on both sides, obviously, and not just Russia and the United States, but military industrial complexes from Israel to Turkey to Iran to China to everywhere was profiting off of this conflict. And I think basically the elephant in the room and the monkey wrench that went into the whole system was the fact that Europe is going through a major recession through self-sanctions, and they're having a lot of economic problems. And the numbers I came through a month ago, we were talking, that came through Russia. Basically, I guess they lowered their interest rates. We talked about last week as well, but they lowered their interest rates and they have double-digit inflation. It's not good indicators of a strong economy. So it is what it is. I mean, I'm not saying that Russia wants this, like that Putin is like, I've got to do this. It's by forced hand, but it's just like, money talks and BS walks. It's just business, bruh. That's basically all it comes down to is business. We want to get these global markets back together again, and we want the economy to churn. And the one to do it would be definitely Trump, being business minded, coming, a CEO and businessman himself, even though it's debatable if he was a successful businessman or a failed businessman, because he received a lot of money from bankers and his daddy. And if you've watched any documentaries on him or read any history on the guy, he's not a very successful businessman, to be honest. He's got good ideas and he's got good intentions, and I think he's a really good networker. He knows a lot of people and he gets things done. And the Art of the Deal, he wrote The Art of the Deal, the book that talks about making deals and that sort of thing. I think he's a good diplomat. I think he's an excellent diplomat, and the fact that's my feelings. I mean, you could debate that, but I'm just saying, as a businessman that makes deals, and a lot of people have said that don't do deals with Trump because you're going to get screwed on it, because he's just a really good he's a good negotiator. So in diplomacy, a lot of it is negotiation, concessions, and just working with people and communication, effective communication, the three things that I teach, in the Red Pill leadership and the the straight talk, not necessarily straight talk, but just Professor Red Pill leadership, Sigma male type leadership style. Effective communication, consistency, and honesty, or self-awareness, being transparent. I'm not saying Trump's all those threes, but this is definitely to leadership, to effective leadership and being, successful. You adopt these three principles that I preach. Not my idea. These are borrowed from Stoicism. These are borrowed from Norhaus and different types of leadership philosophers. Even though that I'm an expert in leadership and business management and law and policy, I mean, it's still, like I said, these are proven concepts and philosophy and business and leadership. But,
what are those three principles?
It's basically an authentic leadership. The three, and the authentic leadership has a bunch of different characteristics, but I find these three particular characteristics or principles to be ideally the most the three pillars of what makes a very effective leader, and that is consistency. Meeting deadlines, being on it. Like, it all comes down to trust, honesty, and being true to yourself and true to people around you, making good deals, fulfilling your contract's obligations, and practicing what you preach, lead by example. So three pillars, by the way, just go over one more time, is basically consistency, effective communication, and transparency. That's it. You stick to those three principles, you will be successful in anything you do. I guarantee it. Or your money back. No, seriously. Like, you stick to those three principles, and you will find that it will change your lifestyle, outlook on life, and you will see success if you stick to those three principles. And I teach that. It's in the Locals channel. I'm writing a book on it right now that'll be published for Locals, paid members. Links in the description. You click the join button with Rumble. But yeah, and like you said, even I give that information for free. It's not even about money. It's just literally like, if you guys want to join, you'll get to read the book for free, and it's going to be very informal and very helpful if that's what you're looking for. Anyway, back to what topic we're talking about: Putin and Trump trade deal. The reality is that this is not so much a peace deal. this is a trade deal. This is a bilateral, multinational trade deal between Iran, possibly China, definitely Russia, Ukraine. Zelensky's going to get something out of this, guys. I'm sorry, but he's getting cut in the deal too. It's like a bunch of gangsters like, hey man, I'm going to get my cut. Where's my cut? You know, it is what it is, business. So yeah, definitely Zelensky's going to get some kind of deal out of it. Ukraine's going to get some deal. Russia, I think EU is going to Ukraine's going to get probably EU status, like membership, as a result of this peace deal. That's probably was put on the table and was like, hey, if you just give these concessions to Russia, we're going to make it EU country. And we're going to integrate you into the European Union. Watch for that to happen. The other thing, I don't think Ukraine will ever be a NATO country. I don't think Georgia, Republic of Georgia, will ever be a NATO country. I think Georgia and Ukraine will probably enter as an EU country together, or at least close to it within a year or two of each other. But yeah, it is what it is. EU is going to expand, but NATO is probably going to stay where it's at, and that's going to be part of the concessions. But like I said, everybody is going to get something out of this deal. It's like what was that? What was it after World War One? What was it what was the organization before the UN? Was it League of Nations?
League of Nations.
And they started carving and cutting up the world and stuff like that. England and the United States and Russia and everything. It's the same shit all over again, because we're going to see probably
knocked out.
Yeah, but it's the same situation. I mean, like it's more or less the same crap regurgitated 100 years later. And
this is what I'm saying. It's the same crap. It's the centuries old imperial politics, like World War One. It's a very good analogy where you had blocks of power. Now, this was very Eurocentric in World War One, where you had the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the French, the Germans, the Russians, the Balkans, the Ottomans, the English, and America. And now things have kind of consolidated and fortified, and so you've got these civilizational centers. And those are America and Europe, and I believe Europe is not independent. It was invaded by the United States of America in 1944, and they've never left. So when you talk about the self-sanctioning of Europe, it's totally true, but it's under America's boot. So you've got the United States and Europe making the West, the Atlanticists, you've got the Russians, and then you've got the Chinese, and then you've got the Indians, the Iranians, the Turks, and these are all, you've got like the world superpowers,
regional superpowers,
regional great powers, great powers,
regional powers, right?
And then you got regional players like, and then geoeconomics and geostrategy. So what's important to note is that this war it didn't just start, right? It was manufactured, and it's been manufactured for going on 20, maybe 80 years now.
91. Let's call it post-Soviet 91, since for 40 years almost. 44 years.
But they started in 1950. It's for decades. So this war was manufactured, and it's been very, very good for the weapons contractors, for Zelensky, for certain individuals, and it's been horrific for millions of people, millions of ordinary people around the world. Those subject to these imperial powers, we've lost out. But for the democratic rulers, they've done quite well for themselves, we'll say. I'm pretty sure Zelensky's a multi-billionaire. I don't know.
He's at least a multi-millionaire for sure. He made a lot of money off of this. Yeah, for sure. Multiples of millions of dollars, like tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah, exactly. And that's not even the money that's probably hidden somewhere in some offshore account somewhere in Cyprus or whatever. Yeah.
Zelensky was identified in the Panama Papers from way back in the day. I mean, they've been prepping for this. I'm not even against offshore jurisdictions.
No, neither am I. I'm in Georgia. Georgia's basically an offshore banking system, that's tied to British banks, in some form. But yeah,
Panama
it's
Papers
just like Cyprus.
Was back in 2016. Cyprus is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So,
Yeah.
imperial politics, this war was manufactured to sell weapons. They've done very well for themselves. And what Trump has done is gone into Europe and said, you're not paying your fair share. And Europe have said, literally, oh, yes, Daddy Trump. And, all of us Europeans are like, ugh. But this is the state of liberal democracy. Trump said, I want you to spend 5% of your economy on NATO. And what that really means is 5% of your economy on American military-industrial complex. Mostly.
Yeah, exactly.
Mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some domestic industry, but it's not much. Most of NATO spending and funding as well is from the United States. So it's a racket.
Even Georgia here, the country of Georgia, like 100% of their military defense forces pretty much provided American or Israeli military equipment, or Turkish or whatever, European equipment. The training is by U.S. NATO members. I mean, it's completely almost, I would not say 100%, but pretty damn close to that number for their defense. They don't really need a defense. There's nobody. They're surrounded by Russia, Turkey, NATO, and they're friendly with Azerbaijan and Armenia, and they really have no threat at all. I mean, even Russia's not really a threat. I mean, some people here might want to beat my ass for that, but I just don't. Russia's not really a threat to Georgia. Yeah.
Some people may say they occupy 2 oblasts.
They were autonomous zones. We don't want to get too far into it, but it is what it is. It is what it is.
So war is a racket, but sustained war, especially with these sanctions. I mean, trade and riches, these sanctions have impoverished. And Europe is suffering. It's not competitive. Energy suffering. The inflation's been crazy. I hear in America as well, the inflation's been crazy. And, officially it's like 2%. But you look at food prices over like 2 years, and certain foods have doubled. I saw some tripled.
Beef has tripled.
Eggs,
and the reason why, eggs. The reason why is because the feed that's being imported and grown, regulations, and then energy and all that stuff that went on during that time. A lot of it's the feed. The feed has went up. I think pre-COVID, there were farmers talking about it, and they said, the feed prices literally tripled, and then they said they're going to triple again. So they went up tenfold between pre-COVID and post-COVID. So that's the main reason why the food prices have exaggeratedly went up. And on top of that, America is importing more food because they can't compete. Domestically, farmers can't compete with foreign imports coming from Argentina and other countries. And that's what we're seeing here in Georgia. Excuse me, that's what we're seeing in Georgia. I mean, obviously, China is probably the same situation. This is the new globalization. This is the new global homo agenda, basically, is just basically destroy your domestic agricultural state. What we're seeing in Europe, predominantly all European countries see this, and import food from cheaper slave labor style countries that can produce it at a cheaper rate. That's where the agenda is, and that's the Blackstone agenda. I mean, the multinationals, they'd rather starve you out by basically destroying your infrastructure and your agricultural surplus and whatnot, and then just say, hey, why don't you bring in third world agricultural goods. I mean, I'm not saying it's not like it's any worse or better. I mean, it's literally the same thing. I mean, I eat beef here in Georgia and I eat beef in America. Of course, the American beef, I think, tastes a little bit better because it's corn fed versus here it's grass fed. But the beef here is a little bit healthier, but it's of course half the price, if not like a third of the price. It's similar to you in Bulgaria. I think our prices are very similar. A lot of your beef's coming domestically, most likely.
Yes. Or it's imported from Argentina.
Which makes it affordable. And there's no tariffs. We don't have tariffs in Georgia. That's why a lot of our, like, even electronics, like I had to buy a new phone. I had to buy a Samsung. I don't want to tell you which one, so I'm not brand ambassading here, but I think that same phone, if I bought it in America, would have been literally double the price. But it was made, I think the phone was made for this market, for the Russian, Caucasus, like Eastern European market.
Fascinating. Growing up in the UK, the price for technology and capital was always considerably cheaper in the USA than the domestic prices in the UK.
Correct.
Because most of it's imported over.
Right. But
and
tariffs.
now, not even with, maybe the tariff, maybe.
But tariffs has a lot to do with it, but like also surplus. It's supply and demand. We know capitalism 101. Adam Smith. We had a podcast on it. If you guys want to go look, it's on the Rumble channel, I believe. I don't know if they let me post it on YouTube, but it should be there. It's at least on Rumble. But yeah, you know what I mean. It's just supply and demand. It's capitalism 101. You know what I mean? If you have a huge supply, then you're going to lower the price because the demand isn't as high. But when you raise tariffs and you have a certain amount of warehousing, because America is full of warehouses, so they had a lot of this stuff, but then you have to deal with the microchips in Taiwan and that issue there. So it's a lot. It's multifaceted now. It's no longer, and you know how when they do manufacturing now, I know a lot of guys that work for Samsung and work for other organizations, and they tell me all the time about like the fact that like screens are made in China and the board is made in Korea or America or whatever. It's shipped here, and shipped here, and by the time it's done, it's finally shipped to its final destination. And that's what's costing so much, is all the shipping and logistics.
Yes, and so again, you look at the ruling class have made a fortune on this war.
100%.
Many people have suffered as a result. The war is doomed. It's been doomed. I mean, everyone knew it was doomed from the first immediately. But, they put up a good fight, and, lots of, a war has occurred. And after 3 years, the European economy, American economy, Russian economy, the world economy is suffering enormously, largely, not exclusively due to this war. There are structural issues that have been plaguing the world for decades, years, whatever, COVID, whatnot. But certainly this war is a massive, perhaps a primary contributor. The gains that have been made, they've made their fortunes. And the domestic unrest and economic recession or depression or contraction is crippling to the power of these societies and worlds and economies, and it's causing a lot of social pressure. And at this point, they ought to cut their losses. And this is what Trump said to Putin. He said, be a realist in your negotiation with Zelensky. Be a realist. Come on, we need to end this war. We need to end this war. And then is the rebuilding, and you've got the rebuilding of Ukraine, of course, which is going to have to be part of the trade deal with Putin, and probably the EU going to be investing in, and American companies and contractors, and they're going to make an absolute fortune. This is again a story very old. Was it Halliburton? And now
Halliburton was basically like Blackstone, BlackRock before it became popular. The running meme of like the military industrial complex. Yeah, before it was cool. Before it was hip, man. The business, dog. Dude, Brah. Yeah.
So I don't know that Trump is a good diplomat. Maybe. He is a negotiator. He is, he's better than a demented puppet, certainly. However, he's kind of all over the place. He kind of says one thing, does another. My argument is
he's not consistent, definitely.
He's not consistent. His opinion changes, allegedly, according to the last person he spoke to. My argument is that doesn't really matter. Again, this is not Trump versus Putin. This is the global American empire against the Russian Federation. So when we're looking at good diplomats, I take Sergei Lavrov as the best example. He's been the foreign minister of Russia since the Soviet Union. He's fantastic. And when the Russian Federation say something, their government is consistent with their foreign policy. So this is, to me, good negotiation. So Russia have just come out and said, we will not allow NATO troops in Ukraine. We've said this for years and years and years and years. Why are you
since before the war?
Push this?
Yeah, since before
this is why the war began. We're like, we can do some security guarantees, and the Western media are like, oh, so we're going to have NATO troops in Ukraine. And they just
I
said,
think it.
no,
I think
we're not
it would be.
conceding anything
Yeah.
fundamental like this. We don't trust you. You're not
Mhm.
trustworthy. This isn't just speculation. We've signed peace deals in the past, and you've admitted to signing them in bad faith.
Correct.
And so we don't trust you. And we can't trust you because you're not transparent, consistent, trustworthy, honest. You're effective at communication, but not in a plain way, in a very underhanded, perfidious way, which is the cause of these problems. So, we're not going to concede fundamentally. But, they can concede. I'm not in Russia. I've never lived in Russia. I don't know what the Russian people are saying and feeling and thinking, but I hear, and it's quite reasonable. First off, Russia's winning on the battlefield. Okay.
Yeah.
If you're a Russian, and let's call it 150,000 Russian soldiers have been killed so far, more or less, whatever, it's about that. And you're winning, and you've killed multiples more Ukrainians, and you've almost attrited the army, and you're starting to make greater advances, and the line of defense is starting to crumble. You may say, why don't we just keep going, keep fighting, and then we can gain more territory? But then the opposition there is, well, and maybe. Like,
I just don't think that's the agenda. I don't think that Putin is a very effective communicator, and he said it. He said his address on the initial invasion, or the special military operation, as they call it. And he basically just said, what was the three pillars, or the things that he discussed, was denazification, liberate Donbass and Crimea, or secure Crimea, liberate Donbass, and what was the other thing? Prevent NATO
demilitarization.
Yeah, demilitarization, prevent NATO from coming to Russian borders. And it wasn't about, we want the country, we want to instill fear in the people of Ukraine or any of that stuff. He just pretty much mission accomplished, 2 years into the conflict, and then now it's literally just setting up. And they they set up DMZ already. They've got all the barriers and the anti-tank barriers. Yeah.
A Surovikin line, 3 lines of defense, which not the first line of defense was not even met, let alone penetrated during the Ukrainian summer offensive in 2023. They got to some villages in front of the defensive lines.
So the reality is that they've already set it up at DMZ. Russia's already established it. I said that would happen towards the later part of the conflict. I thought the war was going to be over in 2 weeks, before it began. Sorry, my camera needs to focus, but I thought the war originally was going to be over in 2 weeks, 2 months, maybe at most. Man, Ukraine really fought back, and America had a lot invested in there, and NATO had a lot invested in there. Multiple bankers basically financed it. So they want that war to go on as long as they could, until the economy went basically tits up, and that's what's happening now. Collapse 2025 is what we've been saying for the last 2 years, 2 or 3 years now.
And this is,
but more or less, I just want to get to that point. You can continue. More or less, Russia has already declared their DMZ. They've already established their DMZ. So now it's a matter of Ukraine, NATO, and Trump, and the Western whatever alliances, the alliance of the willing, to establish their DMZ. And I said that DMZ would probably be on the Dnipro. I can't even pronounce it. I'm sorry, guys. Dnipro River. If I'm pronouncing Dnipro. Yeah, Dnipro River. And that would be a natural. That'll be a natural DMZ, and then from there onward would be basically a demilitarized zone. But it would be basically there's a lot of farmland there, so I imagine that it's literally neutral territory. Civilians can come and go as they please, but no military personnel past that particular waterway barrier. And we've seen throughout the last year, any offensive that Ukraine has tried to go past that particular river, they just basically died miserably and drowned, and it was horrible stuff that was transpired from that. Not including the failed counteroffensives with loss of military equipment and lives that were just pointless and unnecessary. Russia's already taken the territory they're going to take. They're not going to take any more. I remember Gonzalo Lira had said, that he's going to go all the way to Kiev and whatever and blah blah. And it's it's like and I explained this many times in the past on podcast and the Telegram group, and I'm explaining it now. You got to refer to this as like the Mexican-American War, 1800s, when the United States the United States at the time was an imperial. It still is an imperial state, but that was the early stages of its imperialism. They pushed the Mexican military all the way to Mexico City, took Mexico City intact, and they gave it back to them. And the reason why they gave it back to them is because, dude, we don't want this territory, and we don't want these people being citizens of America. We don't have the money, the resources, or wealth to really administrate this area. So it's the same thing with Russia. It's like, why would we want to take Kiev? I'm sorry. Let me say it. Why would they want to take Kiev? Why would they want to take Lviv and these populated, urban cities, just so they have to feed, administer, secure, and all these different things of people that it'd be an occupation at that point. And as we know, occupations fail. We've seen this numerous amount of times with Vietnam, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan for the Soviet period. It's just occupations fail because people don't want to be occupied. They don't want to be under control of a foreign government. It's not rocket science. So Russia's like, their objective is like, hey, I am not going to be going into Kiev. I am not going to be occupying Kiev. Where they are is where they're going to stay. But they will establish DMZ, which I believe they have with the fortifications, and they're just waiting for the West to concede and create their own DMZ. And then declare a neutral territory where civilians can come and go and do what they got to do. It's exactly how it is here in Georgia. We have a DMZ. We have a defined border. Russia allegedly moves that border from time to time, and Georgia does the same thing. But more or less, like, there is a well-defined area where it's kind of like no-go. And they tell Americans and foreigners and even Georgians, do not go in these areas, unless you live there or whatever, because like it's just not secure, not safe. Same thing's going to happen in Ukraine. And this is going to be like North and South Korea for a long time. And I said this at the beginning of the conflict. They said this during the conflict, and I'm saying it now. It's going to be the largest DMZ in the history of the world, outside of the Soviet period, Cold War.
Okay, so I agree with much of what you said, and I've got some counterpoints that I don't know if I disagree, but maybe. So the first thing is to note that there are so many mines along that defensive line.
Oh, yeah. That's the other reason why it's unsafe. It's unsafe. Yeah, definitely. Same in Georgia.
It would take, I don't think, it would take decades to clear those mines. Yeah.
Look at Kosovo. Look at Kosovo and Sarajevo and all that stuff with the mines that are still there, active today. They go off all the time.
Bosnia, yeah.
And Bosnia, yeah.
Arguably, Russia has taken 5 oblasts, which is a neighborhood or a region. 5 regions of Ukraine, which is Crimea, 2014, and then 2022 September.
221, somewhere around there, yeah.
2022, yeah, I think it was the first year of the war. They annexed Kherson, Zaporozhye, Donetsk, and Lugansk. They have almost 100% of Lugansk, maybe 73, 75% of Donetsk, and a similar amount with Kherson and Zaporozhye. And the Russians say, this is now Russia. This is Russian constitutionally. We will never give up our land. And the Ukrainians say, our constitution also says we can never give up our land. But Russia's like, well, you're going to have to because we're bigger than you and we've won the war. So tough titty.
And Trump has pretty much said the same thing to Zelensky. Zelensky's just sitting there like, oh, yes, well, he's like, I guess I would get my $1 billion bonus if I just give up this land, and they just, like I said, they just needed someone to sign the peace treaty. I've said that many times. That's why they keep him alive.
But the other thing is, so Lviv is in the far west of Ukraine. It used to be Poland. It's a Polish
it didn't
city.
See any conflict at all. It was not even. There are people that I've talked to in Lviv, and they said that just nothing went on. Sirens, maybe a couple of bombs here and there, but for the most part, they didn't see any of the Western Ukraine. It was as if like normal day,
except for the fact when the the military officers come around kidnapping men to conscript them to the front.
That's
Anyway.
different. That's civilian domestic. But yeah, Russia hasn't even touched that part of the country really at all. Like
Lviv, far west. There's an even westernmost tip called Zakarpattia, Transcarpathia. Right. This used to be Hungary. But then you got the 5 easternmost regions have been annexed by Russia. There are 4 next regions: Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, and Odessa, or Nikolaev and Odessa. I also don't believe that Russia will annex the far west of the country, because these are filled with Ukrainians who don't want to be governed by Russia. But this was all Russia. Historically, you go back 100 years. You go back 1910. Russia was all the way to Warsaw. This was all Russia. Ukraine and Russia were one country for a long time, and it's an administrative division where Lenin and Khrushchev kind of gave away this land to Ukraine. The point is to say that Kiev is a Russian city, and and Odessa as well. Odessa, Mykolaiv, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv. These are all these capital cities. They're all Russian cities. They've been historically and culturally part of Russia and ethnically filled with Russians. And the primary language there has always been Russian. There's been
especially in Odessa and Kiev, definitely Russian. Definitely.
So you talked about how Russia wouldn't want to take Kiev because they wouldn't want to be the Kiev denizens to be under a foreign government. Well, arguably they've been under a foreign government since the CIA coup or the Western coup in 2014. Who knows? Who knows? I'm not convinced they're going to take Kiev. I think what you've laid out is the most likely scenario, especially the logistics and things. But I think that what Russia would say is all of Donetsk, all of Lugansk, all of Zaporozhye, and maybe all of Kherson. Like maybe they give away what's on the western side, on the right bank of the river. Maybe it's administrative, but I think they're going to take the entirety of the east bank of the territories they formally annexed. Those 4. The Western style of war is not we're going to kill you all and come out on top. They're like, we're going to take as much territory as possible, shock and awe, destroy you. We're going to destroy everything, and we're going to blare it in the media, and we're going to declare victory. So the Russian style of war has been attrition, and they really learned attrition warfare World War II, but even going back to Napoleon, this is how they defeated him. Attrition warfare. So the point is to say that if the Ukrainian armed forces have been defeated via attrition, meaning that the Russian military is still mighty, they've defeated the Ukrainian military, the territorial gains have been marginal. But if the military has been attrited to the point of collapse, which may be where we're at, I don't know. But then there is an argument that, storm ahead. We've demilitarized the country. We have the strong military. Storm ahead. Go in and occupy those next 4 regions, and maybe Kiev, maybe Poltava as well. Like, who knows? This is all hypothetical. The point is to say, I don't. You've said they're going to stop at these 5. I believe that is the likely scenario, because that's the only thing that the Russian Federation, as an empire, have ever actually issued statements about. And then we've got the logistical, everything. Yeah. But I think it's possible that they could, and this is negotiation. We've defeated your army. We can push forward onto Kiev, and certainly this defensive line in the Donbass, which is almost beaten through. There's not too many more defenses to Kharkiv, and then there's not so many more defenses to Kiev. So what I don't think will occur is to be like North and South Korea, because this is that is a peace. Sorry, it's not a peace. It's a
North
it's a
and South
ceasefire.
Korea. North and South Korea are two different countries, but
No,
they're
they're
all
one
part.
country.
Well, they're part. They're two separate
Right.
entities, two different
They're two
governments,
separate
two different
entities,
countries.
but there's
Right,
a
but they're
permanent
part of the same
ceasefire.
country. Right. Versus Eastern Ukraine is now part of Russia. So the DMZ is going back to like a old Cold War type of DMZ, but I don't think it will be an actual DMZ because, like I said, right now, like Georgia trades with Russia and they buy Russian oil, and there's Russians living and working and doing business in Georgia. And this was a study in conflict was in '08. We're in 2025, so 10 years, a decade later, is as if the younger generation doesn't even know about the study. They don't even talk about it. They have no clue. So like I said, give it a decade or two and it's as if the war never even happened.
So
That's I've been saying this, and you'll see it, and you'll, like, if we're still doing this podcast 20 years from now or 15 years from now, heaven forbid, so you just look back at this podcast for the statement I'm saying right now. In 10-15 years, it's as if they're going to forget that the Ukraine war even happened. So think about the Afghanistan conflict. Do the conservatives even talk about it, about the fact that we left all these weapons and just pulled out, and they referred to it like Vietnam pull out and all this stuff under the Biden administration? No, they don't talk about it anymore. I don't give a shit. Do they talk about September 11th anymore? No. We don't even.
So-
They used to do this big anniversary every year for September 11th, and they don't do it anymore because people forget.
So I think that the natural state of Russia and Ukraine is integration. There is a saying: scratch the back of a Russian, you'll find a Ukrainian, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that, like North and South Korea, where it's like like enemies, I don't think that's possible. I think Putin would say that's not in our interest. We would keep pushing forward. What Putin has said, and what the Russian Fed, again, screw the figureheads, in the sense let's it's bigger than them. It's the Russian Federation. They have said consistently, we are looking for a permanent solution. And a permanent solution to me isn't a ceasefire, it's a peace deal, and then a trade deal, and how we move forward with integration. To me, that screams, maybe there's a military DMZ, but there's trade.
It's already done, dude. The deal's already been done. It's already been done. It's already been negotiated behind closed doors. That's why I told you, like, last week. I said, this is what's going to happen. We saw this on media, and people still don't believe the fact that there's a peace deal. Yes, there's a peace deal. The Ukraine war is over. I knew this like 3 months ago. There was like, yeah, they're working on a peace deal. Russia and Zelensky and all of them. It's just all puppetry, and because the Ukrainian government is broke right now. I don't know if you guys know that, but they're out of money. Like, literally, people haven't been paid for like months now. Military officers, government officials, people haven't been paid. So, yeah, and Russia, like I said, their economy's not doing well. Obviously, America's teetering, and European economy, who knows? It's country to country at this point. But yeah, these countries are broke. The war's over. I'm not saying there's not going to be a World War III scenario, because we're looking back at history repeating itself 100 years ago. Yeah, World War I, and then there was a peace deal, and then they said this is the war of all wars, and we'll never have it again. And then sure enough, like 10 years later, is World War III. So there will be a weapons build up. Your NATO and Europe will build their weapons up. They will train personnel. It is what it is. Russia's going to do the same thing.
2032.
I don't give a shit what they say. It's military industrial complex. America's going to sell weapons that were destroyed and depleted in Ukraine. Russia's going to build their own weapons and manufacture. Again, there's going to be weapons built up, and there could be a potential World War III. As I said 2 years ago, that the war would eventually end. I thought it was going to end a year ago, but because Biden was in office, we had to wait till Trump. And then I said, once Trump is in office, within 6 months, it'll probably be over by summer. And here we are, and I pretty much got the timeline almost exactly right, as I predicted a lot of this stuff pretty accurately. But nonetheless, yeah, there could be a possibility of a World War III coming later. Joe Salente, although I know him, I talk to him, we follow each other on LinkedIn, says we're already in World War III. I was like, nah, I mean, maybe a World War 2.9 or something like that, but not World War III yet. World War III is going to be AI, and it's going to be digital and all this stuff that I've been talking about. And we're nowhere near that at that level now. That's like decades and decades from now.
Right, you look at the weapons contracts with Europe and they say, oh, we're going to be building all these things by 2030, 2032, 2035. They don't have the capacity to launch a war in the next 5-10 years. But they're going to be building up to it. They're broke, absolutely. And, the military-industrial complex and spending, it takes many years for them to do that.
It takes a decade. It takes a decade to rebuild a military. It takes a decade to rebuild infrastructure and military equipment and technologies and innovation, education, investments, it takes years. So we're not going to see any type of major conflict. This is the most major conflict that we've saw in our lifetime, and even the boomers' lifetime. And we're probably not going to see it again until, like I said, 2030, 2040 or later, if it's ever going to happen. This was our big conflict. This was our World War III, guys. Nothing happened. As you say, I'm on, what do you call it? What do you say? I'm on the stance of nothing ever happens. Well, there you go. Nothing ever happened. It's all staged. It's not really staged. It's just banker wars and then military industrial complex. They provoke wars. They stage them. Like I said, enjoy the magic show and the expensive firework display. And then they're going to sell some weapons and do some trade deals, and banks are going to make some money. But go ahead.
Again, I agree with what you're saying, but I caveat it with the saying that, over 1 million people have died. Millions of lives have been affected. Tens of millions hundreds of millions of lives have been
I think it was like at least 2 to 3 million casualties on both, like including both sides and civilians. It's 2 to 3 million.
Talk about that
where I'm
next.
estimating, yeah.
Talk about that next. But what I wanted to say is denazification. This is one of the objectives of the special military operation. And what does that mean? When America...
We'll get to that, DC. Go ahead.
When America won World War II, they did. They went into Germany and they imposed their will on the politics, on the domestic politics, and they embarked on a decades-long, consisting till today, policy of denazification. In Germany right now, if you were to hail a taxi, or if you were to have on your phone some ancient Indian icon, you can get in trouble. You don't have free speech in Germany, etc. What they did is a decades-long psychological operation to denazify the population, pacify them, and really screw with their minds intentionally.
Psychological.
We don't know what the Russians have said. There will be a new government in Ukraine. When we win, you're gonna have new elections, and I think they're not going to be allowed. The Azov type, Zelensky type, the Nazi government, which means what does that also? So the education, the denazification. I think there's going to be a massive cultural imposition by the Russian Federation as part of this deal.
Correct. Yeah, and I said
so it's kind of a soft occupation. They don't have to have their troops, but they're going to occupy the right. They're going to reassert their soft power. And the West
it's going to be like Georgia. It's going to be like Georgia because I don't want to get too far in politics. I'm here and I don't want to talk about politics with Georgia, but more or less the government that's in power now was put in power during the Obama administration because they had better ties with Russia. They had friendlier ties with Russia, the party that's in, and they felt that they were a little bit more diplomatically with Russia at the time. And then you went through two different presidencies, and those agendas had changed. So most likely the new government that comes in Ukraine, and they will have new government because that's going to be part of it. They're going to ask Zelensky, you need to step down and allow open elections. He's not going to be in power anymore. I can guarantee that. He's going to be stepping down and going into Hollywood or whatever the fuck he's going to do afterwards. But more or less, like they're going to find candidates that are going to be funded by the US, maybe by Russia or whatever. And they're going to be like, these people, we got to get some people that are pretty neutral and that are willing to work with both sides. And they're going to be really fishing and looking for these type of people that probably aren't in the country right now, that are probably going to be stateside or European side that have Ukrainian citizenship. And that's what they do here in Georgia. So they pretty much do the same thing. Yeah. And most countries too, where there's a lot of duality between dual passport holders, if you will, probably being Israeli, Ukrainian more likely. So
I'd just like to touch on the casualties for a minute. I was saying in the last episode, I think it's about 1.2, 1.4 million dead Ukrainians. Now, I after that, I went and thought about that. I said, why do I really think that? What evidence do I have? And so I went and did a kind of forensic analysis. I looked at what the Russians were saying, and I looked at what the Ukrainians were saying. I looked at what Ukrainian aligned sources were saying, and non-aligned sources. And what I came up with yesterday was, I think maybe you look at Mediazona, a Western Ukrainian aligned source. They say we can confirm about 125,000 dead Russians, and we suspect about 160,000 total. With we haven't proven it, but we think 160,000 dead Russians. The West, you go on X right now, you'll see people saying there's 1 million dead Russians in Ukraine. So, okay, what about Ukraine? I think there's somewhere I think there's 1.4 million losses, which means about 600,000 dead, maybe up to 700,000 and 800,000 wounded. Now, there was just a leak before we started, reportedly, allegedly, on disclosed TV. They say, well, the Russians have hacked the entire Ukrainian military. They've got all their systems, and they've got the records of the soldiers, and we confirm that there is 1.7 million dead and missing in action, but dead Ukrainians. Now, I don't know if I haven't been able to confirm that. It's purely hypothetical because these underlying claims so far lack credible verification. But if they say we've got terabytes of data. Okay, show it, and then we can sample it and see. But this actually aligns with what the Russians have been putting out on TASS. Although they say 600,000 Ukrainians have died this year. I don't know. Point is, it's somewhere between 600,000 dead is my estimate to 1.7 million, which I don't believe, but that's the latest leak. And then the Western narrative, they impose this alternative reality. They say, no, the Ukrainians have lost 150,000 dead. The Russians have suffered over 1 million casualties. And so this is what many in the West, and especially in Western Ukraine, believe. I've tried my best to be as neutral as possible. I think this leak, I haven't been able to verify it, so I'm treating it as Kremlin propaganda. And I've chosen my statistics, and this is what I'm going with. The point is to say the cultural perception, the perception of the masses in Western, and even, I've spoken to people from one of these border regions, like on the Dnieper, who have moved out to the West for like university. So, and they say, Putin's a terrorist, Russia's a terrorist state. And
all right, so what's the number that you come to, like, just final conclusion? I
think about 600,000 dead Ukrainians, lowest, maybe 750. And 160,000 dead Russians. So I'm going to 160,000 dead Russians and 750,000 dead Ukrainians, 5-1, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I'm still sticking at 2 to 3 million casualties total, with civilians included, for both sides included. So that's about equivalent to what the Korean War was, and the Korean War was about the same.
So I think it's slightly less.
Same. It's about the same military might. Like the same amount of military that were involved in that conflict. It was a multinational conflict as well, and a bankers' war, and it was around 2 to 3 million, and they didn't have the sophisticated equipment that they do now, so it could be higher than that. But I'm just going to leave it at that. Let's get to this question here that DC 2004.
Very quickly, to conclude, the reason I've gone into this is because you have these alternative imposed perceptions that need to be governed. And the Russians are going to say, well, we need to really propagandize you and say, we didn't destroy your country. The Westerners, you trusted the West and their democracy, and you brought this upon yourself. We are the better overlord. And that's what I think has to happen.
And at the end of the day, Putin came to America to negotiate a peace deal. So let's see who actually won. I mean, the reality is that Ukraine held the line. You know, Russia thought they're going to walk on through. I'm not for either side and care less either way, but I'm just saying, like, I think it was a well-matched military might. I think Ukraine and Russia both put the equal amount of military soldiers, and that's generally in all conflicts. They usually evenly match. And although, and like I said, a lot of the Russian military hasn't seen action. You know, just like the Ukrainian military hasn't seen a lot of action. There were some small skirmishes and domestic things, but they haven't seen this type of trench warfare before. Neither has the United States as well. Maybe somewhat in the Iraqi invasion, but this is war from like World War II level or Korea. So yeah, a lot of modern soldiers have not seen this type of conflict before. So the one thing is that the Ukrainian soldiers that lived through this and the Russian military soldiers that lived through this, they are now battle ready and battle. Yeah, you're not gonna be messing with these countries now. So there's no one gonna be invading these countries for a long time because they've gathered a lot of intel, a lot of information, a lot of training, and they're combat effective. So but Russia was like the United States was working with Ukraine for many years before the initial conflict, and Russia, you know, obviously it is what it is. But these were not, you know, if the United States was there, they'd probably screw it up because it's usually bankers' war. But it would have been a lot different show. I mean, it would have been pretty nasty. You would have seen massive casualties and cities being completely destroyed and obliterated. If America was actually in Ukraine, they would have pushed into Russia and started hitting a lot of the borders and probably even bombed the shit out of Moscow too. It would have been major. Would have been World War III. We didn't see it. It is what it is. It's a regional conflict. It didn't explode into a larger conflict. The Iran conflict and the as we're talking about now with the Pakistani situation. These are just regional conflicts. And like I said, the Israeli-Iran conflict got out of hand. As I said it would. I predicted it would, and it did. And then that came to its climax, and then now it's kind of dwizzled out. The Indian-Pakistan conflict was just kind of a fluke, I think. They've pretty much run the edge with each other for many, many, many years since Pakistan declared its independence. That's just going to be an ongoing type thing. That's like an Azerbaijan, Karabakh, Greece, Turkey type situation. I mean, these are just things that are going to happen. Israeli, Hezbollah kind of thing. So the main thing is trying to contain it and keep the peace and trying to come up with some type of solution and diplomacy. That's the main thing. And it's going to be the same thing with Ukraine and Russia, is trying to keep these guys from going to war with each other again.
The question is, have the Ukrainians been defeated, or have they just been contained? I don't think that Russia's been defeated, but have they been victorious?
No, Russia has not been defeated. Russia has been successful in the military operation they proceeded to. They gained new territory. They gained new citizens. They gained they gained resources that like most of the resources that in the territories that they occupy now, or at least control or became annexed part of Russia. There's a lot of minerals and a lot of like very expensive oil and gas, fields that are in those regions, especially in the Crimea and the Azov Sea. So they gained a lot of resources from this conflict. And not only that, but they gained citizens and a little bit of territory. They don't need the territory. They really don't need the territory. It's just that they have...
It's Western territory with black soil as opposed to Siberian tundra. So
correct.
The reason why I talk about defeating militaries is that between Israel and Iran, they had their Operation Broken Spear, and Israel weren't defeated. They were on the brink of it, and then Trump came in, America came in.
It was a stalemate. At best.
Yeah. Iran have said the conflict's not over. Nothing's been resolved. The war's still ongoing. We've just stopped the missiles for now. But we recognize that the conflict is inevitable and it will reheat up again. The question is possibly when, and you know what? We are ready and prepared for it. And how much of that is bluster? Certainly, I believe Iran have the conventional capabilities to wipe Israel off the face of the map. And had the war lasted another 1 or 2 weeks, I think they would have won. However, the imperial master the United States of America and its allies, had they joined in, then Iran would not be able to defeat them and may itself be defeated, but not before Israel suffers catastrophic losses. So what are the thoughts on that situation reheating? Eventually it will, unless something drastic changes, and nothing ever happens. So
as far as Iran-Israel conflict is concerned, I think Israel as well as Iran both have the similar situation, that they have a lot of really pissed off people in their constituents, and they have a lot of possibility of color revolutions in both of those countries. So they're very unstable politically, because they have leadership that is just that people do not trust or believe in anymore. That's what I think. And they got a lot of resources. They got a lot of resources, a lot of wealth, and they're both being manipulated by major regional superpowers, or at least superpowers or regional powers. And it is what it is.
So interestingly, Iran is a democratic republic, where it's an Islamic republic with a theocrat, but they have a whole democracy structure.
Oh, of course.
So what I was going to say is, when we're talking about the money that was made in the wars, the people who have suffered as a result, I was going to say this is a structural issue of democracy and of democratic republicanism. And you have these same problems in Israel, in Iran, all over, of democratic republicanism that continues to rear its ugly head. And these wars are largely a consequence of that. I mean, the Israel-Iran is there's a lot deeper than that. But you've got this regional power, Iran, which does have regional ambitions. By the way, I've spoken to some Iranians, and they do genuinely believe that they ought to have hegemony over, for all the way from Lebanon to Pakistan. Say that's what they believe. There is this containment element there, but the important thing is, everyone is suffering economically because of the policies of the politicians. If you could all just stop the war, stop the fighting, focus on development, solving these problems, because all this internal unrest, what is the situation going to heat up? Warring states against warring states. I think the greater problem is the internal instability that there's a result of these policies, and that's what they need to be focusing on. So a massive rebuilding effort, not just in Ukraine, but especially Ukraine, all over the world. This decade so far, since 2020, has just been a cluster F word, and nothing yet has been towards resolving that. Let's get things back on track. Trade deals, removal of sanctions and trade barriers, energy prices, get them to come down, and focus on food security, economic development, industry, and that's how the world gets a better place.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for the most part, and I talked about this with you prior to the podcast, but yeah, more or less, I think that a lot of these conflicts, as DC 2004 asked, what will be the debt? I guess what's the debt will Trump hit within his presidency? How will impact these wars? I had told you about that. A lot of these conflicts are a result of economic uncertainty and slowdowns in the economy, global economy, if you will. The multipolarism that's occurring, trade wars, currency wars, things of that nature. And that's the reason why we're seeing a lot of these heated up conflicts regionally, especially this Israeli-Iranian conflict, because of super sanctions and all of this against Iran. And Russia and Ukraine's a little bit different, but like a lot of these, like I said, Pakistan, India, even like Uruguay, Africa, I believe there was a conflict there as well. There was a recent conflict in Thailand. These are all a result of economic uncertainty and downturns. Commodities, resources, Karabakh definitely is another one of those particular conflicts. And I had said collapse 2025 that we would see a lot of these conflicts arise during 2025, which we have seen due to the economic uncertainty and the global economic slowdown. So I'm sticking to that. And to answer DC 2004's question and also kind of conclude my final statement that a lot of these wars are a result of the repercussions of the bankers' decisions, politicians, as you said, with the fake democracies and, you know, all this like hoo-ha and like, you know, poor leadership and incompetent leadership. And I don't think it's necessarily incompetent leadership. I think it's just basically like 2008. It's just planned incompetence, greed, and fraud. And that's all. People are making billions, people are making trillions, and they're doing backdoor deals like the last podcast we said, backdoor deals, blah, 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 all that. People are making money. When you hear peace or when you hear trade deals or when you hear like, you know, like any of this stuff, someone's making money. So that's all it's going to be at the end of the day. Bankers wars, and bankers are going to be making money, and they make wars profitable. I don't know why it's profitable, but it's just they think it's profitable because, you know, it is what it is.
To quickly answer your question, DC, on Statista, the forecast is $42 trillion by 2028, up from about 37, 38 now. I would just conclude to affirm everything Professor said about it being bankers' wars. And I would recommend, and I'll post it in Telegram, a lecture or a YouTube video by Michael Hudson, who is a renowned economist, American economist, called the Collapse of America's Economic Empire. He was working in the banks through the gold standard, through everything. He was the one that said, you've got this fiat money, central banking. You're going out and inventing manufacturing wars, all the debt, this $42 trillion forecast by 2028, all of that is military spending. If you didn't go out and manufacture these wars and have this military, you would have no debt, basically. Mm-hmm. It goes very into detail. It's a great lecture, and so that's the business. It doesn't enrich you, me, him, her, but it does enrich them.
It's just business, bro. It's just business, bro. That's all it is. It's just business. It's just business, bro. That's all it is. Yeah. At the end of the day, just business, bro. That's what the title of my podcast is. You know, straight talk. What was the title of your podcast for your syndicate?
It's just business, war for democracy. And
of
course, democracy is not freedom of the people and the right of the people to rule. It's the oligarchs to do as they please, as they will. And just in conclusion, everything else is a circus in order to assuage public opinion and get them to believe and buy into the narrative that they manufacture in order to support and facilitate their preordained policies, which they've written and talked about and set up years, decades in advance. And then they all coordinate the imperial structures in order to come to these outcomes that enrich them at your expense. And that is democracy, and that is the war for democracy, and that is just business.
Just business. Yeah. Hey guys, thanks. Like and subscribe. Thanks to my members on Rumble we hit 100 members or 100 followers, and that's great. That's the number I was looking for on YouTube. Guys that follow me on YouTube. I need to hit 500, so I'm at 48. Come on, man. If you watch it, just click the like button for me, man. Or not just like, but subscribe. You don't even have to watch the podcast. I don't care. Just subscribe for me. I'm kidding. But Rumble 3. Sorry, Rumble 3 gets you, I think it's hashtag Rumble 3. It's in the description. Gets you $3 off locals membership, or at least if you want to donate or whatever. It's like it helps me with the cost to run the studio and all my equipment, all that stuff. Subscribe to Madam Maxwell, the Liberty Rising group on Telegram, and his YouTube channel as well. Definitely like and subscribe. Thanks guys for joining us. Like I said, we try to do this once a week on Wednesdays. We try to start at 9. Was it +4 GMT, or is it +5 in Tbilisi? I think you're +4, I'm +5.
I think I'm +3.
Yeah, you're +3, I'm +4. We're like in Europe, so like Eastern Europe. So yeah, it is what it is. European bros, like joining us, it's an afternoon for you guys, and in America it should be early morning, so it's kind of like a morning or after, like a after lunch show for you guys and the East Coast. But that being said, thanks guys, thanks Adam. Yeah, I'm signing out, man. Peace.